All right, welcome back to the Rialto.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody, so much for coming out on this cold night. My name is Bill Crandall, and I lead the merry group of volunteers who are transforming this iconic movie house into a home for live music, theater, comedy, arts, education, as well as movies. And I want to make one clarification note. We are not open, and most of this building is not functional. So what you are in right now, it's kind of like a food truck. It's a little pop-up space that is going to raise awareness for the menu and what we're hoping to have in the future with the Rialto Center for Creativity. Speaking of the future Center for Creativity, we are expecting that in the coming weeks, we are going to find out that we will be awarded most of the funds for the project, and we are simultaneously kicking off a $9 million campaign to complete construction and fund our operations. So this is where we really need you. We need you. We need your connections. And please help us, and let's get this new Rialto open in 2028. All right, terrific. Our guest tonight is from Westfield. If you were to walk into Westfield High in the mid-'80s, turn right, turn left at the gym, turn left down the center hallway, you'd be staring at his locker, okay? And I know that because mine was a few lockers down, and even though I was a class behind him, we were hi-bye friends, and he totally knew my name. In between him scurrying off back and forth to classes, this guy was breaking big stories for the High-Zi, okay? After that, he went on to continue his journalism career at Rutgers and then on to Texas, where for a local TV station, he covered everything from rodeos to rattlesnakes. And then it was on to Washington, D.C., where he is the Chief Washington Correspondent for Fox News. But I'll let you see for yourself.
Mike Emanuel, Fox.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm wondering, sir, if you believe that health care reform that you work so hard on is in danger at this point, and whether there's a threat as a result of this election.
I know that there's some Republican candidates who won last night who feel very strongly about it. I'm sure that this will be an issue that comes up.
Describe your relationship with those who wear the uniform of this country.
My view of the relationship is one of great appreciation and pride.
Leon Panetta for CIA director. Does that choice trouble you in any way due to his lack of intelligence experience?
I like him a lot. He's one of my favorite Democrats, if I can put it in those terms. That may be the kiss of death for Leon.
Okay, we've got huge breaking news right now. We have the full statement we can show our audience. Quote, it has been the greatest honor of my life to serve as your president. And while it has been my intention to seek re-election, I believe it is in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down. That President Biden on X just a short time ago. We are reacting in real time here on Fox News Live. All right, let's bring in my colleague Bret Baier, our chief political anchor here at Fox News, get his reaction to this breaking news. Bret, we saw drip, 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 37 Democrats saying President Biden should step aside, and now we've got the announcement. Your thoughts?
Mike, this is a tectonic shift in politics.
One group helping veterans year-round is Gray Team, whose mission is to support active duty U.S. soldiers and veterans by creating solutions to reduce and eliminate military suicides. One segment we featured on Fox News Live earlier this year touched the life of a veteran in a very special way.
I've lived on that precipice of wanting to end it ever since that day when I seen the Gray Team on Fox News about 7 months ago. I'm like, well, this is for me.
Former Vice President Cheney passing away last night, surrounded by his family. I had the blessing and honor of interviewing Cheney several times over the years in Texas when he was the Halliburton CEO, leading George W. Bush's search for a running mate. Our interview was about the impact of television on the modern presidency. Vice President Cheney was a serious political figure at consequential stages of American history.
At first, I thought these were workmen working on the building.
And then I realized, no, that's not the case at all. This is very, very strange. Take a look.
And ultimately assign task force or teams that will go out and determine what can be done to make sure that this problem never happens again. And so a pretty ambitious agenda that will start tonight.
White House correspondent Mike Emanuel has authorized this kicker. He is getting some personal grooming advice, apparently, from one late-night show. So what is Mike's best look? We report, you decide.
Let's see.
Fine, let me just tell you, our intrepid Capitol Hill senior
Let's see.
producer,
Would that look
Chad
better as a
Burgum,
beard?
said
Let's take a look. Yes, it would. Yes, it would. Yes, I think it would. It would. Better.
And I can tell you that in between TV appearances, he takes time to like and comment on his old classmates' social media posts as well. Our host is lives in Westfield with his family. He commutes to New York, where he is a member of Elvis Duran in the morning show on Z100. That is, we are honored to say, that's his voice that you heard in our vision video. Please welcome, they crept up behind me, Garrett Vogel and Mike Emanuel.
Mike, welcome home.
Looking back at those high school photos, I wondered why I didn't get girls at the time.
I heard differently.
Thanks, Garrett.
No, seriously, Bill told me a whole story. I was like, Bill, I got to get up here. Come on. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
Fun memories of the Rialto, Westfield, that just stick out in your mind before we dive into everything we just saw.
So I want to say that we got cable TV in middle school. So before that, like the Rialto was the center of entertainment in this town.
Right.
And you drive by and see what was playing at the Rialto. And I was a little kid, but it felt like Jaws was playing here for like a year.
I think it's still playing downstairs. I mean,
yeah. So like this place is Westfield.
Right.
And so the marquee is just a beautiful point in this gorgeous town. And so when I heard about the repurposing of the Rialto and Bill said, would you come up? I was like, yeah, of course. Absolutely. January 15th. I don't know, but no, I'm honored to be here. It's great to come home.
All right. So let's jump into your career. What sparked the journalism bug for you?
So mom and dad were news junkies. Back in the day, they had 3 newspapers in the driveway every day, the Star Ledger to track the local sports, New York Times, Wall Street Journal. Ate my breakfast every morning listening to news radio. Would walk in the family room. My father would have a news program on with a newspaper in front of his face. And so it was just everywhere.
You were inceptioned.
Yeah. And so my parents, the best advice my parents gave their 3 sons was find your passion. If you're passionate about what you're doing, you won't mind working long hours to get to be good at it. And that's really the key to a happy life. And so my mom and dad were like, what's your passion? I'm like, I think news. I was fascinated watching, local reporters at the scene. My heritage is Greek American, and Ernie Anastas was on the local news.
Yep.
And I'm like, hey, if Ernie can do it, what about me? And wouldn't it be cool if I was like out in the field and Ernie's tossing to me and I'm tossing back to Ernie? And so my parents were like, then you should go do that. And so at Westfield High School, I was doing the high. And then when I got to Rutgers with a couple of my friends here tonight, I think we were eating our slice of pizza and I had the paper and I'm like, the radio station. You mean I can be on the radio here? How cool is that? And it got me in front of a live microphone without a script, and it was great training for the journey that I've been on.
I mean, you did such a great job that you were inducted into the Rutgers Hall of Fame as well.
Thank you. Yeah.
I mean, what an honor. Does it feel like real, like when you get a call going, hey, we would love to induct you into a Hall of Fame?
What stopped me in my tracks was they said there are 596,000 living Rutgers alumni, and we were making 5 members of the Hall of Fame this year, and you're one of them. And I was like, wow.
Amazing. Now we go from Rutgers and being on the radio to your first gig. Tell us about the first gig. What was it? How did you land it?
So I was sending out audition tapes all over the country and to every small town in America, just trying to find a gig. And
what was the dream? What was the dream gig that you wanted at the time?
The dream gig would be, hopefully a few years later, to bounce back to local news in New York. So mom, dad, and dear friends could watch me on the local news. And so I was sending out tapes everywhere, and I come home one night, my dad goes, "Mikey, a news director called from Midland, Texas. She's offering you $14,500 a year and says you'll get to do everything." And my Wall Street mother looks at me and goes, "Michael, are you going to be able to live on $14,500 a year in Midland, Texas?" And I said, "I don't know, but I'm about to find out." And so I didn't know anybody in the whole state of Texas.
First time in Texas?
First time. And arrived in Midland, Odessa, Texas, sight unseen. And that's where Friday Night Lights is from.
Right.
So the weatherman, Lloyd Lindsay Young at Channel 9, where I was doing some freelance work, he's like, "Get the book Friday Night Lights." And I'm like, "Okay, why?" And he goes, "That's about where you're going." And so 45,000 screaming maniacs watching high school football in West Texas. I'm like, wow, we didn't have this many fans at Rutgers games that I was announcing. So,
so being in Texas and being, the guy from up north,
yeah,
you got a nickname.
Yeah. So at Midland, Texas and Waco, Texas, my friends all called me Jersey.
Because you had the accent, right?
Yeah. So they'd be like, "Okay, we're going to go do a story at the rodeo today. Jersey, you're going to the rodeo." Next day, "Okay, we're going to do a story at the Rattlesnake Roundup. Jersey, you're going to the Rattlesnake Roundup."
What was the Rattlesnake Roundup? Just to describe for those.
So it's like a pit of rattlesnakes. It smells terrible. They're frying them because everything's like deep fried, and
it tastes better
in parts of Texas. And so I'm like, well, I'm not eating that. But I jumped into the pit with the rattlers. And I had protective boots and all this stuff. But I was like, whatever. Like, if I'm here, I might as well get into it.
Right.
So I'm doing live shots, and these snakes are going like boom, at my feet. And I hear the control room going nuts, like, "Be careful, error on the side of
Jersey,
caution.
be careful."
Yeah, Jersey, be careful. And so I just figured like every day was an opportunity to get better at what I was doing. And so I could work on my on-camera presence. I could work on my writing. I could work on my voice. I could work on everything, the questions I asked. And so like I didn't let that bother me that I was getting initiated day after day. And then it paid off when I got an offer to go to Austin, Texas, spring of 1994. And I was hired to be the weekend anchor there and a 3-day-a-week reporter. And so I was the, prize pupil, the new hire. And so my boss pulls in me and a female 5 o'clock anchor, and she says, "Come here." And so we go into her office, and she points at the female anchor and says, "You're going to cover the Ann Richards campaign." And then she points at me and she goes, "You're going to cover the George W. Bush campaign.
Oh, wow.
He'll never win, but it'll be good exposure for you." But when you're Jersey, who's been doing the Rattlesnake Roundup and the rodeo and the Ostrich Festival and all these other stories, governor's race, touchdown.
Oh, yeah.
And so I was literally the first TV reporter on the bus with George W. Bush. He started calling me Mikey. And one day I called my dad. I'm like, "Hey, Dad, somebody else is calling me Mikey." And he's like, "Oh." I'm like, "The governor of Texas." He goes, "I guess that's okay."
Now, at the time, were you up on politics? Did you know anything? Like when you got the assignment, were you already versed in politics before they threw you into the governor's campaign?
Great question. So my parents were political junkies in addition to being news junkies. So I grew up around them being so engaged in the issues. So I was definitely reading, but when I got the assignment, like I jumped in head first to really know all the issues of the Texas governor's race and to know everything about George W. Bush's background and where he was trying to, point out differences between his plans and Governor Richards' plans, and really just tried to totally immerse myself in the assignment to be ready for election night 1994. I'm dating myself. And I was interviewing Karl Rove and Karen Hughes, like members of the Bush inner circle. And the next day, my boss pulls me in. She goes, "You were awesome last night." I was like, "Thank you." And she goes, "You're not our weekend anchor anymore." I'm like, "What happened?" And she goes, "Well, you're the first TV reporter on the bus with George W. Bush. So you're going to be our political correspondent." I'm like, "Okay, well, what does that mean?" And she goes, "You're going to do all things Texas politics Monday to Friday during the day." And I'm like, wow. Like, because as you know, in the media, you have some kind of lousy shift. Like you're up in 10 minutes to go to work.
Literally.
You work weekends. Even if you're doing the Today Show, you're up at 2:30 in the morning or 3 o'clock in the morning. And so to hear like I'm working banker's hours covering the governor of Texas, I'm like, that's another win.
Right.
And so anyway, that was the first part of the Texas extravaganza.
Did you, a little part of you, miss the rattlesnakes?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
Like you kind of retired that part of your career.
So years later, when I was at Fox, I was a field correspondent. I didn't always cover the White House and Capitol Hill and everything else. And so I would call my mom on the way to the airport, and she'd say, "Michael, where are you going?" And I'd say, "Charleston, South Carolina." And she'd say, "Michael, isn't that where the hurricane's heading?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's the point, Mom. I'm the guy who's gonna be standing out there getting my butt kicked in the storm." And she's like, "Oh dear," And so I think she hung up the phone and said a few prayers, and thank God it all worked out.
Now, as we saw in the video, you've gotten to get to know, interview many politicians out there. Let us in a little bit behind the scenes. You've gotten to know them on a personal level. Any fun stories that you could share with us?
So President Obama took a liking to my wife, not in an inappropriate way. But like Jay Carney was the White House press secretary at the time, and he said, "Mr. President, these off-the-record luncheons you do with the correspondents are good, but they're all looking at their watches because they have deadlines. They got to get back on the air, or they got to file their stories." So he's like, "Why don't you do a cocktail party one night and have them come in with their significant other, and it'll be a lot more chill at the end of the day." Perfect. So I say to her, like, "Would you like to go to a cocktail party at the White House on Tuesday at 6:30 p.m.? Meanwhile, I've been traveling nonstop. And she says, "That would be lovely." And so we walk into the White House for this cocktail party.
Casually.
Yeah. And so we have drinks in our hands, and I see Secret Service file into the room. I'm like, all right, the president's close. And I see the president come in and stop at a first group of reporters. So I place her strategically in President Obama's peripheral vision. He walks from the first group of reporters right to her. So I'm like, bingo. So I walk up and I'm like, "Mr. President, Mike Emanuel, Fox News." And he goes, "I know who you are." And he goes, "You're Rahm's little brother," because his chief of staff was Rahm Emanuel. And I said, "Now, Mr. President, if that were the case, sir, I would have much better access." And he's like, "That's true, that's true." And so he gave her a big kiss on the cheek. And so like, it was just kind of fun behind the scenes. And I think there's a healthy, obviously we have our moments where you're covering these political figures and they don't love the question you ask, but
they realize it's part of their job.
At the end of the day, they realize you have a job to do, they have a job to do, and I think as long as you try to be fair and respectful, they get it.
Now, I remember you telling me a great story about a president wanting to speak to your parents.
So President Bush came to the Armory in Westfield when he was doing a Social Security reform tour. And so I was going to be doing live shots in the White House North Lawn that morning. My cell phone rings at 6 a.m. and it looks like the press office. And so I answer, and 22-year-old kid says, "Hey, Mike, I need to find your parents." And I said, "Well, they're going to the event. Fox is responsible for beaming it to the satellite, and so they're going to be there." He's like, "No, I need to find your parents because the president's going to want to say hello." And I said, "Well, that's really, really kind." I said, "Well, here's my mom's cell phone number, but I guarantee you they're going to be there." And sure enough, he finds my mom and dad in the Armory. and he takes them and puts them on stage while the president's doing his remarks. And thankfully, he didn't put them right behind the president, because I would have caught endless grief for that. But they were on stage while President Bush was making his pitch to the community. And so then afterward, he gets done with his remarks, and the kid comes up and says, "Mr. and Mrs. Emanuel, the president would like to say hello." And so it was unbelievable.
I'm sure it was one of those stories that got told every other day.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, Mike, let's talk about, you work weekends on Fox News, and you've been quite busy over the last couple of weeks and months.
Yep.
Bring us into that life of, you come into work just about to report on the news, and a curveball comes out of nowhere.
Right.
What's it like, just, first to compose yourself, to get all the facts, to get the whole team together and be able to deliver that to the public out there?
So the one not silly clip in the video of President Biden dropping out of the campaign, we were live on the air about 45 minutes into the show, and Fox confirms that Biden is dropping out of the campaign. An earthquake in American politics. And so we go with it. I have, whoever's on set with me get their reaction. And then for the next hour and a half, we go commercial free without any scripts. Like, my producer's in my ear going, "Okay, we're going to Kevin Corke, who's in Delaware next." And so introduce him, and I'm like,
You're on the fly.
Yeah, and just keep the conversation going, asking him questions. When's the last time we've seen the president? Do we know if we're going to see the president later today? Like, just keeping the program going. And then I interviewed my old boss, who's an analyst now for Fox, Britt Hume, and he at one point says, "Mike, you realize this is American history that you were in the chair for?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah. Like, this is why you get into this line of business, to have these kind of moments." And I am beyond grateful. But like several weeks ago, I had been working with the team, like, to get great guests for Saturday and Sunday, like, let's kick butt. And I wake up Saturday morning to a million texts and emails about, like, we just went into Venezuela and removed the dictator. I'm like, okay, we're getting rid of all those guests, and we're starting from scratch at 6 a.m. to find people, foreign policy related, members of Congress, et cetera, who can, talk Venezuela, talk foreign policy, but like, we're scrapping it on the fly. And that's just kind of the excitement and or nervous energy of what we do, because the news cycles flip so quickly. You can think like, oh, this is an interesting story, it'll still be good on Saturday or Sunday, and then something happens and you're like, we're not talking about that at all. We're totally shifted to something else.
Now, talking about the nerves too, as we saw that you've gotten to interact with and interview President Bush and President Obama. But let's take it back to that first time. They see you sitting there with the press, and they go, "Mike Emanuel, what was it like getting called for the first time by a sitting president to ask a question?"
That's a great question. So you're in a room full of journalists, probably 100 or so journalists in there, who are all hoping they get a shot at asking the president a question. And so he's got his card of who he's going to call on, and you don't know, like, maybe he'll call me first. Maybe he'll call me 12th. Maybe he won't call on me at all. And so you go in with a long list of questions, because you don't want, like, him to go, "Mike Emanuel, Fox News," and go, "I got nothing."
Next.
Yeah. And so you've got this long sheet, like, what could I do on, what would be timely on this? What could move the ball on this? What could be, and then sometimes, like, you'd have a colleague get the first question, and then they say, follow up on something else. So I'm like, they took out two of my questions right there. And so then you're like constantly on the fly thinking, do I ask a follow-up to what Chuck Todd just asked, or Jake Tapper just asked, or do I go to question number 3 on my list? And so it's constant, your brain's running 100 miles an hour, and then you hear him say, "Mike Emanuel, Fox News," and you're like, oh, and somebody's handing you a microphone, you stand up, you're like, "Mr. President." And it's an unbelievable honor. Unbelievable honor, because like like I said, there's probably 90 colleagues in the room who won't get a question that day or that night, and you get one, and then if you can sneak in a follow-up, even better.
Do all your coworkers and all the other reporters after that first time go, hey, great job.
Yeah, they're like,
You got one
okay,
in
so
there.
you didn't freeze. Good job.
You got
Okay.
one in there. You got one in there. Let's talk about just the landscape of media right now, too. Like, from 10 years ago to today, do you see what has been the biggest challenge for you, per se, just dealing with the internet and AI and everything thrown our way? How do you combat that and be able to deliver, just the news straight?
Great question. So the technology is just constantly changed in my career. And so, like, I remember, covering the Bush campaign in 2000, and like you had to be at your desktop to get your email. And so we were printing out a lot of stuff, and you'd have a lot of like paper with you. And then in 2004, I think we got our first Blackberries. And then at some point we got our first iPhones, and texting became a thing. And then, all of a sudden we're using the iPhones, maybe if our photographer's not there, like shoot some video as the person walks by. And so it's just gotten faster and faster and faster. And then when we realized, like with President Obama, his team was into Twitter,
right?
What we now call X. And they would post stuff on social media, like before they blasted it out in email. And we were like, is this official? I guess it is. Okay. But then every Yahoo in the country had a voice suddenly.
Yep.
And somebody would put out, like, Speaker so-and-so has just resigned. And you're like, has the speaker resigned? Like, so you have to still do the principles of old-fashioned journalism, which is make the phone calls, text message, whatever, 2 solid sources before you go to air, because you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube these days. Because if you're way out in front and wrong, the internet never forgets, and that's a disaster. And so, do we get like something maybe slightly off? That happens sometimes when you're
fast. The pace is just too fast to keep up.
But at least if the main points of your story are spot on, then you can say, like, that's what my sources told me. They were solid on everything else. They may have been wrong on that little thing, but we were 90% there. So
a lot of your colleagues yesterday have problems with Verizon
Yeah. Well, I mean, that just shows you, like, the technology, when you don't have it all of a sudden, like, I can't text anybody.
Right.
I can't call them either.
Back to the old school way.
Right. I guess I have to go walk over and look for them. And hopefully they're in their office. It was really something.
Now, I know we probably have a few aspiring journalists from high school to college. Advice for them wanting to jump into the business now?
It's a tough business, so you better love it. Kind of like the radio.
Yep.
But if you love it, it's not like you're working most days. Like, you get to know the news before everybody else does. And, literally the dream when I was watching TV with my parents was, what if I could be out there telling people what's happening in the country or around the world? And while I didn't end up doing it local in New York, like my mom and dad saw me in Baghdad, Kabul, covering war with the American presidents all over the world, I'm living beyond my dream. So if you have a dream, go for it. And that doesn't mean just sitting on the couch and like, oh yeah, I want to be an American Idol one day. It means like figuring out, how am I going to potentially get there, and working relentlessly with that goal in mind to say, like, I'm going to make it happen. And then if a better opportunity pops up, then being smart enough to go, that wasn't part of the dream, but this is a great opportunity over here. Like I thought, like, I just got to get back to New York, and I got an offer at a young age to go to Los Angeles. Well, that's market 2 in the country. That was a good opportunity. And then my agent called one day and said, Fox News wants to hire you. And I said, but I should have interviewed with somebody. And he's like, they're a startup. They want you. they're sending you a contract, sign it and go tell your TV station you're leaving. And so that was like another leap of faith. And so I think at times you got to be willing to say, like, I don't know if it's going to work out, but if it does, it could be awesome.
What did the boss at the TV station, though, when you said, hey, I'm going to this startup network, Fox, it was, did they say, good luck, God bless? And
they're like, dude, you're going to a cable startup? What's up with that? Like, and then years later, like, they saw me, you know, at the Vatican with President Bush, you know, at the Beijing Olympics with President Bush, you know, Fort Hood with President Obama. Like, you know, I got unbelievable opportunities that I never would have gotten if I didn't take that leap of faith. And so, you know, sometimes you got to bet on yourself and hope it works out. And I remember I was standing in London after the death of Princess Diana with my colleague Shepard Smith. And I said, Shep, is this Fox thing going to work out? Like, I was a month into being with them. He's like, I don't know, but we're going to have great resume tapes, aren't we? And I said, that's a good point. So, and thankfully, I haven't had to send out another tape. It's been almost 30 years.
It's amazing.
And an unbelievable run. I'm grateful.
Now, before I switch over to my hard-hitting questions in a second, I wanted to ask you, what would you consider your Mount Rushmore of stories that you got to cover in your career?
Great question. So if you have a religious bone in your body, which I do, when I got to go with President Bush to the Vatican as the network pool correspondent, meaning I was the eyes and ears for all the TV networks, running through the halls of the Vatican. And I'm not Catholic, I'm Greek Orthodox, but I have a healthy respect for people of faith. But like all of a sudden I realize I'm in the Pope's private library with Pope Benedict behind his desk and President Bush 5 feet across from him. And I'm standing there like, how the heck did I get here? And so Benedict doesn't know President Bush really at all. It was their first meeting. And he says, you know, how is Mr. Putin? Because we just come from a G8 summit in Germany. And Bush realizes the media's in the room. So he looks over at me and he goes, Mikey, how are you? And I'm like, all right, so I'm in the Vatican. The President of the United States just called me Mikey in front of the Pope. This is unbelievable. And then I went with President Bush to the Holy Land, and I was the pool correspondent when he went from Jerusalem to Ramallah to the Palestinian Authority, and then we flew by helicopter to Bethlehem. And so I walk into the Church of the Nativity, and so happens the section we walked into was the Greek Orthodox section of the church. And I see all these clergymen in their black robes, and I walk up and I start chirping a little Greek to them. And they're like, oh, like this guy knows some Greek. Like, and so next thing I know, the advanced guy on the trip was also Greek Orthodox. He's like, Mike, come here. He takes us back by the altar to say hello to the Patriarch of Jerusalem. And he says, your beatitude, this is my friend Michael Emanuel, a Greek Orthodox boy from Washington, D.C. And so he looks at me and says, can you accept a gift? And I'm like, I don't know, can I accept a gift? And so my buddy elbows me, he's like, can you accept a gift? And I'm like, okay. And so he goes, bring me the gift we were going to give the president. I'm like, what? And so a big red velvet box comes out, flips it open, and in Mother of Pearl, there's a nativity scene. And he goes, here, take this home to your family.
Wow.
And I'm like, what? And so then my buddy Christian goes like, all right, we got to go. President's going to be out and make a statement to the pool, and you got to be out there for the statement. And so I'm like, can you give this to the president? I don't feel right accepting it. He goes, absolutely not. He said they gave him a gift, and guess what? The gift they gave him is going to sit in his presidential library forever, and probably nobody will really look at it because it's with all this other stuff the president accepts on behalf of the country. He said he gave you that for a reason, so when people come to your home, you'll talk about your time in Bethlehem.
Wow.
So that was awesome. I've eaten way too much time, but those two certainly come to mind very quickly. I think, being at war with our men and women in uniform, like seeing them really put their lives on the line. They don't make American foreign policy, but they have to carry it out to the best of their ability. And so I think being in Kabul and being in Baghdad has made me a better journalist. And I am so proud of the men and women who lay their lives on the line, and so proud that I got to tell a lot of their stories, and I try to whenever possible.
Well, that's amazing. Well, now going to bring it a little bit back home a little bit.
Sure.
So these are going to be rapid fire, first come to mind. There are no wrong answers. North or south side?
North side.
All right, there we go. There we go.
I went to Washington School. For those.
The man knows how to please the entire crowd.
All right.
Favorite place to get some food in town? There are no wrong answers.
I love the Westfield Diner. No question about that. I also have a soft spot in my heart for Ferraro's.
We all do, I think. One place you always return to when you're back in town?
Probably both of those places. Very food motivated.
And then one thing that you noticed that hasn't changed about Westfield?
It's this charming downtown. Like, the shops have changed, obviously, but like seeing the Rialto sign like that in Barron's across the street, and it just reminds you of what a blessing it was to grow up here, and what a great place this is.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Now, we'd love to, if anybody has any questions, field some questions. Now, you get to play the role of Mike, and Mike gets to play the role of president. You are the press pool now. Don't be scared.
Okay, I'll ask a question.
Okay.
You spoke about...
Hi, what's your name?
Hi, my name is Casey Chandler.
Hi, Casey.
Hi. You spoke about being in Midland and then leaving there and going to, was it Austin and Waco?
Waco and then Austin.
Okay, and having that opportunity to find your voice. Could you describe what you mean by that?
So, before I left, I was freelancing at Channel 9 in Secaucus, New Jersey, and they would send me out. So, like, if the story was in Brooklyn, they would send me to City Hall to fire a question at Mayor Dinkins. So, in New York City politics, when you catch his eye, you better hit him with your question. Boom. And then I go to small town Texas, and I don't sound like them. And so I would go into the sheriff's office and say, "Sheriff, what about the drug bust on Interstate 20 last night? Talking 100 miles an hour." And he's like, "Yankees coming in here, like talking to me like that?" So then I realized if I said, "Sheriff, you been fishing lately? How about any hunting?" And I would try to remember who his favorite high school football team was. Then I would say, "Sheriff, tell me about that drug bust last night on Interstate 20. Well, Mike, blah, 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 blah." And so I learned cultural differences, and being the guy out of Westfield, like I remember going into like the 7-Eleven and like, all right, I got to get a big gulp and go and like run in and this gal would look at me and she'd go, "Hi, where are you from?" And I'm like, oh boy, here we go. And so you just kind of learn that people in other parts of the country may have, different tendencies, different preferences, different way of doing business. And so I think it was interesting for me to kind of learn some cultural differences, to respect their way of life, and to try to do my best to be effective at what I do, but also appreciate who they are and where they live.
Yes. What's your name?
Jennifer.
Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, Jennifer.
So I'm from Brooklyn. Oh, I'm from Brooklyn.
Right
I
on.
appreciate you because I went to training school in Dallas, Texas, and had to learn very similar things. But my question is, in everything that you've talked about, in so many roles and countries and all the things, I'm a mom, as many people are here. how do you manage your to-do list and like all the things that you have to get done? Like you're saying, like things change in a hot moment. Is it a paper list? How do you do it?
Have you met my saintly wife here?
President Obama loves her.
Fair. So she, I think, is the glue that keeps it all together, to be honest. And I would say to her frequently, like, hey, President Bush is going here, like on short notice. President Obama's going here on short notice. And it's like, okay, we have to cancel a bunch of plans. We've got small children. We've got a lot going on. And she would just say, like, go do your thing. I've got it. And so I do not want to underestimate a supportive spouse. Absolutely. But otherwise, like, I think when you walk up the driveway of the White House to go to work, like, if you don't appreciate that, then you know it's time to go. Like, if that doesn't feel special, you got to go. When you get an opportunity to go into the Oval Office to ask questions, if the president's with a foreign leader or somebody else, like, you better be like pinching yourself pretty frequently. And so some of the stuff you just say, like, all right, I'm not going to be on this treadmill for my entire life. I will find a little bit more normalcy than covering the White House at some point. But as long as you're there, you might as well enjoy the ride. And so there are a couple times I was on like Air Force One with both presidents, and there's like turbulence. I'm like, if the plane goes down, they're not even going to mention that I was on the plane. I do not matter at all. But
you'd be the second line.
Yeah. The graph that got cut. So it's just, I think when you start out humbly, which, when I got out of Rutgers, my roommate was a finance major, and old school, landline phone, I'd answer the phone. Hello. Would you tell John that we're offering him a signing bonus to take this job? Like, signing bonus? You mean shortstop for the Yankees? Like I'm going to be scrounging for like a few freelance hours at a local TV station if I'm lucky. And so when you start out very humbly, and I think when you get some of these amazing opportunities, if your life changes like that, you just say like, this is what I signed up for, and try to make the best of it. And I remember I was watching a Washington Capitals hockey game on the couch in my sweats, and I get an email from Jay Carney saying the president's going to speak to the nation at 11 p.m. And this was Sunday night. So I run upstairs and I like grab my church clothes and I put it back on. And my wife's like, where are you going? I'm like, the White House. It was the night that he announced that bin Laden had been taken out. And so I could have been like grumpy about like, bug me on my Sunday night. But it was like, that was American history. And I had the blessing of being in the briefing room to talk to the American people about it. And so, I try to be grateful. And then at some point you look for a position in the industry that maybe is not constantly based on the president's schedule.
Yes. What's your name?
Emily Bracco.
Hi, Emily.
Hi, Emily.
Hi. When you were at Rutgers and kind of following your graduation, and you were immersing yourself into the journalism and communications field, sorry, I wrote my question down. Did you solely focus on politics, or were you kind of like immersing yourself in other things as well? Like, were you kind of open to all opportunities?
Open to all opportunities. Great question. And so at Rutgers, I did sports on the radio, which was a blast. But then I realized that, like, if the Giants quarterback retires and he's a popular player, like, he's going to have his choice of sports jobs. And then I realized that there were a lot more news opportunities. I had an uncle who many, many years ago wrote for the Chicago Tribune. He's like, kid, you're a smart kid. Do the news. Be a sports fan in your free time. challenge your brain, go do the news. And so that's where I found opportunities. And I was not, specifically chasing politics, but then I was just every day trying to be better and better and better. And then that one day my boss was like, oh, we'll have the new couple of employees cover the governor's race. And that kind of took me in that direction for the next 30 plus years.
Did you have a follow-up question? I'm joking. You look.
I have a question. Elizabeth Meals.
Hi,
First off,
Elizabeth.
thank you very much. This has been incredible stories you've told. You still have a career ahead of you, though. Is there anything that you still want to do? A person you want to interview, a place you want to go, anything on the bucket list?
You have any suggestions?
Would you go back to the rattlesnakes?
Yeah, why not? I mean, look, I think, I think about all the time, like who I'd love to interview. And
you have that bucket list of people?
Not really written down. I think it's kind of,
it changes over time, but
yeah. I think they're like, I think it'd be cool to sit down and pick the Pope's brain because, I mean, especially since he's an American-born Pope, I think that's cool. I'm not Catholic, but I have a healthy respect, and so I think that would be really fascinating, especially the first American one. I'm sure there will be different political figures who will emerge, and I'll be like, yeah, I want to pick that person's brain. I'm a sports junkie, so like, if somebody said that Derek Jeter wanted to come on the show, or our golden doodle's named Jeter, so obviously I'd be in favor of that. If John Harbaugh is the new Giants coach, God willing, decides he would like to come on Fox News, that would be cool. And so one funny segment I've had to do recently with somebody way back is Alexi Lawless was at Rutgers when I was there, and so I used to cover the soccer team, which was like top 5 in the country at the time. And so now he's a Fox Sports analyst, and so I've requested to have him on the air, and he's always like, "Yeah, my New Jersey brother, Rutgers friend, how we doing?" And so then it feels like we're back in college, kind of, and it's always a good time, and so he and then Carly Lloyd is our big like female soccer analyst at Fox, and they're both Rutgers alums, and so they came to DC to promote, I think it was the Women's World Cup, and so then they have like, walking around these 2 Rutgers legends around our studios and stuff like that, and they're like, "What's he doing with the soccer players?" And they're like, "Oh, they all went to the same school. Isn't that cool?" So, sorry, that's a meandering answer. Forgive me. Thank you.
We got one more in the back.
I'm Carl Salisbury.
Hi, Carl.
Hi. You mind if I call you Jersey?
Please.
So you've talked a lot tonight about a career that seems relentless. Like there's a relentless and frenetic kind of energy to your days, your weeks, your months, maybe your years. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering if there is a sense of burnout. And if the answer is no, then that's a really short answer to the question. But if it's yes, then what do you do to ameliorate the burnout if you're feeling it?
That's a great question.
When a journalist says that, I feel really great.
And I'm not just buying time. Seriously, that is a smart question. Yeah, there can be burnout. And so I think you have to kind of take moments to decompress, to hopefully put the phone down, put it away, stop looking at social media, stop looking at your text and email, and assessing kind of where you are. And, if you have a family, which I am blessed to have, and 2 children, like you sometimes need to take a step back and say, how are they all doing with all this stuff that I'm doing? Even if they got to go to the White House Easter egg roll, they made some sacrifices along the way too, where Dad wasn't there. I I think it's important to, my wife encouraged me, believe this or not, at some point to take up golf, because she said, she just noticed that like I always had the phone in my hand, either looking at a text from somebody related to politics or a tweet from somebody in politics or an email. And she's like, find a hobby, because otherwise I think you're going to die young. And I'm grateful for that. And so in my late 40s, I started playing golf, not well, but it forced me to put the phone down and to think about other things. And I think that has it, not just golf, but just like some time away, well spent, I think has a recharging of the batteries effect. And, you know, we've been blessed to go on some cool trips as a family. And so when I come back from family time, I certainly feel like, all right, I'm ready to like jump back in, let's go. But I think if you don't find a time to reset and or put the gadgets down, you're probably in trouble at some point.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming out tonight. Thank you, Mike. Welcome home. I think Ferrara's is open for like another hour or so.
Thank you, Garrett and Mike. That was so fantastic. Thanks for coming tonight, making the trip up today, both of you. So the arts and creativity are so important at every age, from preschool through seniors. Helps with mental health, stress, anxiety, problem-solving skills for little kids. You know, it's community engagement for any age, but especially for seniors. So the future Rialto Center for Creativity is going to be a place for everyone. It's going to be for all those ages. There's going to be activities, things to do, things to watch, things to see, exhibits to come to, talks, movies, film, everything. And the thing that we're asking you guys tonight is to join us. Join this group of volunteers. Help us get the word out. Connect, support, follow us on social. Take a picture tonight. Post on your social media saying that you had a great time, and tell people you know to come to one of the other great spotlight speakers that we have once a month. And join us in this Rialto Reimagine campaign. We can't do it without the community. And we have this dream to bring this to life, and it's going to be amazing for not only Westfield, but for the whole community. And having young journalists in the crowd tonight, like, this is amazing. This is what it's all about. So Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. Thank you again, and enjoy your night.